Hello, indie authors. Welcome back. We are in part 3 of a series on talking about going wide with Ingram Spark versus only using KDP for your indie printing. So today, in this third part, we're going to talk about building a profitable long game publishing strategy. We've talked about how to know if you're ready to go wide. We've compared KDP and Ingram Spark so that you can see the differences between them. Today, we want to go beyond the upload button. If you've decided to go wide and you're publishing on more than just KDP, now is the time to think like a publisher if you haven't already. I've been talking about making this a business all the way through everything I talk about. But if you haven't done that, this is where you need to start thinking like a business owner, because this episode is about the long game. This is about setting realistic expectations, serving bookstores and readers well, and protecting your profit margin so that you can keep on publishing more books. If you are somebody who your goal was to produce one book and you are done, you got the words out there you really wanted to do, that was that special project you wanted to do, this is not for you, and actually you don't need Ingram Spark for that. You just needed KDP. You got your book out there. This is for the person who's thinking long range, that this is a side business or eventually maybe wants it to be their full-time business. So let's talk about that long game mindset. We want to start with expectations, and we want to be realistic about those, because this is where many indie authors feel frustrated. Going wide isn't this magical switch that suddenly sends your book into every bookstore in the country. It isn't like you put it out there, and if you put it out there, they will come. What it really does is it makes your book available everywhere. It plants the seeds in the marketplace, and they might take a really long time to grow, but that's all it does. Using wider distribution does not automatically send sales your way. It might mean that it's just getting a chance to have a bookstore take a look at it and compare it to some of their best sellers, and maybe you have something that looks like the kind of thing their readers want and they give you a chance. Maybe it's that a library is ordering, but it's just not a guarantee. And some of these, when you're publishing, you don't see the immediate numbers. You see numbers after they've shipped, but you really don't even get paid sometimes by some sources more often than quarterly. So you just need to be aware that this is, like, again, a long game mindset, because the numbers don't just appear in your bank account a week or two later. It just doesn't work that way anywhere in publishing. It's actually, even though I get paid monthly from KDP, it's actually not that month's sales. It's like a month and a half ago's sales. And so nothing's immediate in this. In fact, when a book sells on Amazon, it doesn't show up in my dashboard as a sale until it ships out. So even that's not instant gratification. So we always want to think of wide distribution. It's a laying a foundation. It's not building the whole house in a day. Now we want to think about serving bookstores well, because if we're putting our books out there to allow bookstores to order them, we might not be walking into the bookstore with a pitch, but we can still make our book easy for them to say yes to. And then if we are walking into a bookstore with a pitch, there's another level. So first, let's talk about the first part here. We have talked about this in other episodes, but I can't really reiterate it enough. So there are some things we need to make the book friendly to the bookstore so they want to sell it. We want to use industry standard metadata. We want that ISBN, the categories, the keywords, the pricing, all of it to follow best practices so that people can find the book in the catalog. But also, when they're selling it, you want the bookstore to be able to have somebody walk up, scan it, boop, in the system, and they pay their money, and that's it. You don't want to make it complicated. So the barcode, the price in the barcode, all of those things need to be done the way a bookstore wants it. You also want to set competitive pricing. Look at the other books in your genre, matching the pricing range as best you can. You don't want to overprice just to chase after this bigger margin, because the books that are priced too high are harder to sell. But you also know that when you're printing on demand, there's a higher cost than there is to those books that are done with offset printing, done in massive batches. So you know that you have to find a middle ground there. You know, yours could be a little higher, but you don't want it so high that you're selling a book for over $20 when nothing in that genre is selling for more than $15. You just need to be aware of like, where is this book selling? What's the price range? You want to offer a fair wholesale discount as well. We've talked about that in the other episode of that 40 to 55% option you have to make a profit. But if you set it too low, you make their profit margin too thin and a bookstore doesn't want to stock it. When you're setting up a book in Ingram Spark, you have the option of making it returnable. When you make your book returnable, this is a huge benefit for bookstores. They're far more willing to take a chance on a book if they know they can return unsold copies for credit. I'm aware of why this is helpful, but I have personally chosen not to make most of my books returnable. And in a few days, I'm going to drop a bonus podcast episode and a blog for paid subscribers that explains why I don't follow this advice. But that is a choice you have to make when you're setting your book up. Is it returnable? Yes. Is it not returnable? That is going to affect some bookstores in their decisions. And then something I harp on a lot, and that is delivering professional quality. A polished cover, clean interior layout, your spine text, all of it, how it's presented, signals that you respect the bookstore's reputation and their shelf space. This has evolved for me. Some of the things that I have produced of my own have improved in quality over time as I learned some things. That's common. But the thing is, we're always striving toward what a bookstore wants. And the advice that I see everywhere about serving bookstores goes far beyond this. So I really want to think about how we truly serve them, emphasize that word serving them and not seeking something from them, because all of the things I just mentioned are ways that we make a book sellable for a bookstore, but they don't help us cultivate the relationship with the bookstore. It's really important for us, if we're going to show up for an event and we're going to do a signing or an event, something like that, and it's really important that if we're going to do that, we're not just sending sales their way for this one thing, and then we move on and we buy our own books somewhere else and we don't ever show up there for them. Really, if we're going to have local relationships with bookstores, it does have to be a relationship. And this is something, again, it's your choice on how much you want to cultivate that. If you don't want to get really into that level of business, then maybe sticking with Amazon doing KDP is the way to go, because you're just building that online customer relationship versus thinking about, how do I collaborate with local bookstores? All of this needs to become part of your strategy. And then it really has to do with what is sustainable for you. I know I can have a really fabulous strategy sometimes, but it's not always sustainable for what I can physically do and how many appearances I want to make and all of that kind of thing. I do know that there has been a push for supporting local indie bookstores. So whenever possible, it's important to try to do that, even if it becomes changing our own shopping habits and supporting that local bookstore and paying a little bit more for a book because we're supporting that local business and what they do for authors. It starts with those little steps, and then it becomes this mindset really of authors and publishers and bookstores all collaborating together. Now, I've talked about serving bookstores. Let's talk about serving readers. And specifically, let's look at serving readers everywhere or serving readers well. When indie authors think about going wide, the focus often shifts to the platforms, the distributors, and the reach. But wide distribution isn't just about mechanics. It's really about the reader's experience. And let's talk then about why the reader experience matters. We want that reader to have consistency across platforms. Readers will notice when a book is $12.99 on Amazon but $15.99 elsewhere. We want to keep the prices aligned because it avoids confusion and frustration and really potentially lost sales. But consistency builds trust with the reader. And it's not just about the bookstore. It's really about that reader of like knowing they can go to their favorite place and get your book for the same price. Maybe it's on sale once in a while, but not consistently on one place. They always also want to experience a high quality experience, their files. Now, this is something that's sometimes out of our control. when we're indie authors, because I have had people who get books where some of the pages are upside down or the whole thing, the cover's on upside down. We don't have control over the production when Amazon ships it out. Sometimes people don't realize, though, that all they have to do is contact Amazon or wherever they purchase the book to let them know there was a mistake with it. They sometimes are asked to provide some photos, and then that book can get replaced at no charge to them. So when somebody experiences that, I've seen it where they leave a bad review, and it's like, with print on demand, the author doesn't have control over that. So all you can do is be kind. If someone reaches out and they're really mad because they got a bad copy of something, you just tell them, "Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you." All you have to do is contact where you got it, and they will go ahead and replace it for you. So you tell them that. But then outside of that, we do have control over some things like weird margins, like keep them with a good space around. Don't put your print all the way to the edge of the pages. Of course, typos are within our control. The quality of our cover images is in our control. So we work our hardest to make it look professional so the reader has a really good experience. We send them that message then that our work is worth their time and worth their loyalty. And then we deal with the customer service issues as they come up, the things that are outside of our control. And I have even had it where it was something I shipped directly to the customer, and so they had something with a problem with it. It wasn't like they could go back to Amazon themselves because I had done a wholesale order. I had to handle it. I had to ask them to send me a couple of photos. Sometimes you can't get that and you're just stuck with it and you eat the cost of it once in a while. It's really not that often. So when it does happen, we just deal with it and we move on. One of the other things we can do is to think about accessibility. Some people put out large print editions. Sometimes there's the option to do hardcover along with the soft cover. There are audiobooks, there are different ebook formats that meet your readers where they are. Serving the readers with these different needs shows that you value them individually and not just as a sales number. Now, the details in all of these things are things you have to weigh out again, because you may have two people who will buy an audiobook, but you also don't sell more than that. So that is a challenge where you have to think about, do I release my ebook on these platforms or do I keep it here because I get more sales with, say, KDP Select because people can subscribe and get ebooks that way? All of those are factors that as a business owner, we have to think about. And those details may feel small, but they do add up to trust, the kind of trust that brings the reader back for your next book. So think about all the factors. Even if you don't choose to go those directions, think about why, like weigh the pros and the cons of each one. We really want to balance the reach with sustainability. So the catch is going wide takes an investment. Formatting multiple editions, managing different platforms, maintaining the quality across all of them, it isn't free. It isn't free in time or in money. So if you're going to put out multiple editions and you're hiring somebody to do your files, then you're hiring them to take your print book and make an ebook, and that isn't free. It isn't free when you have to spend a lot of time marketing them to all of these places. So the question isn't just, can I serve readers everywhere? It's, can I serve them well and consistently over the long haul? Sometimes the wisest move is focusing on the platforms and formats where your readers already gather. You might not capture every market that a big publisher can, but you'll serve the readers you can reach with excellence. And that may be the difference between a one-time sale and a lifelong reader. The bottom line then is that going wide isn't about being everywhere at once. It's about choosing where you can build trust, and it's about creating consistency and sustaining that investment over the long haul. Sometimes that means, for me, serving fewer readers, but serving them better. And for many indie authors, that's the strategy that builds that loyalty and the longevity. You have to think then, as you're thinking through all of these options, about business strategies for profitability. Because once you've built the relationship with the bookstore, you've built the relationship with the reader, you still have to talk numbers. Publishing wide can be profitable, but only if you run it like a business, and so you have to know the numbers. This is where a lot of readers just want to deal with the fun stuff. A lot of writers, I mean, we want to just write the books. We don't want to think about the business. But when we're indie publishers, we have to think about all of those aspects of it. So I need to know my break-even point, and you do too. You need to add up your costs. I need to know how much does it cost to edit. Let's say editing is $1,200 and cover design might be $500 and maybe formatting is $850 or more than $1,000 if you have a really complicated book. The ebook formatting, maybe $300. There's other fees, there's coaching. You add that all up, and let's say you have a production cost of $2,900. Now, in today's standards, when you're hiring somebody for all those pieces, that's actually really reasonable. So let's say you pay $2,900. And let's say you earn $3.10 per copy. In the last episode, I gave a break-even example with the discount on Ingram Spark. So let's imagine that you need to sell 935 copies to break even if you're selling through Ingram Spark and you're earning $3.10 a copy. 935 copies. Now, that means we have to set strategic prices. Your price has to cover the wholesale discount, the printing cost, and your profit margin. So if the printing cost is $3.65, I'm going to give you the formula for how I got to that $3.10 profit. I think I gave the example in the last episode too, but let's say it costs $3.65 to print the book. And your retail price is $14.99. Let's say you give a wholesale discount of 55% off the cover price. So the bookstore gets $8.24. And you do the math and you take the cover price, what the bookstore gets, and that leaves you with $6.75. But there's a printing cost of $3.65. So when you subtract that out, you're left with $3.10 in profit. Now, if that's not enough profit, because I actually aim to try to earn around $5 per book if I can, at least. So let's say you change the retail price to $16.99 instead of $14.99. Now you could get your profit up to $4 per book. And then it would take $725 to earn back your investment. Okay, so I'm thinking about that as a business owner. Like maybe if I just raise the price, but I still have to sell quite a few. So then I take into account the other ways that I market my book. I happen to be a speaker, and so I sell my books on a book table when I speak. I often price them lower than what they are on bookstore prices to make it simple for checkout. So I have books that are anywhere from $12.99 to $15.99, $16.99, $17.99. But I will say all the books are $15 at the table, or 3 for, well, like 3 for $35 would be a deal. That's a really good deal because it would be $45 if you bought all of those books. Sometimes I'll set them where they are $12 per book or 3 for $30. This just depends on how much inventory I'm trying to move and what's on my table. But I have found when I do those 3-4 deals, I sell way more books than if I just have a price on every book and say it costs, this one's $11.99, this one's $12.99, this one's $15.99. I figured the printing cost is actually fairly close on each of them to me. So I just put them out there for kind of like everything on the table is this much money. But if you buy 3, you're getting a discount. You could even do it's like a buy 2, get 1 free. So it's $15 per book or $30 for 3 books. They're getting 1 free. So it's a buy 2, get 1 free. Whatever, you do the deal. But what I have figured out is that when it costs me $3.65 to print those books and get them shipped to me, that's my wholesale cost. If I sell them at $15 when I speak, I earn $11.35 per book. That's a lot more than when I sell them on any online platform, including KDP or anywhere. So if I were selling them just when I'm doing some speaking, I could sell 255 books and I could earn back the entire $2,900 I invested into getting that book published. So you can see that when you can sell direct to the reader, you can earn back your investment faster. And that's why a platform matters. So for me, it didn't take me that long with the first book I published to earn back what I had invested because I was doing a lot of speaking. And so I was buying some books at just the printing costs and I was selling them when I was speaking. And I was also earning honorariums for doing the speaking. So I didn't even factor that in. That was separate income, but that also helped with getting the book out there. And it, again, most of the time we're for me, especially with the books that I write Bible studies and stuff like that. I'm not thinking about how much money I'm going to make on that book, but I also am thinking about how much time it takes me to write that. And it means that I have to treat it like a part-time job because I don't have enough time in my life to do a full-time job and write high-quality books and produce them. So they need to earn me a part-time income. They have to pay for what it costs to make them, and they have to earn me a part-time income. I do have money I earn every month from selling books. I have deposits that go straight into my bank account from KDP especially every month. And that's good because then it allows me to feel comfortable about investing the time I need to produce books. So that's why I say no matter what it is, we think about it like a business. And when you're putting your books out there and going wide, think of them in terms of a catalog. I want you to think about like what else is part of your catalog of books. Like singers have their catalog of albums. This is what for writers your catalog is the whole collection of what you put out there. So the second, the third, the fourth books are often where the profitability begins to multiply. As each new release comes, it boosts the sales of your backlist. And that's why we see indie publishing as a business, not a vanity thing of getting one story in print, but an overall message that we continue to put out there consistently. The last thing that you have to think about when you're thinking about this as a business and analyzing the numbers is you need to check your reports periodically, quarterly, monthly, whatever you're doing. You need to be able to assess, are you making enough per copy? Are returns eating into the profit if you're doing returns? Because that can happen. Can you adjust the wholesale discounts or change the prices or something? When KDP raised the prices for printing, because paper costs had gone up, I went through and reviewed all the books I had out there to see now where does my new profit margin stand. And I had to raise the price on a couple of them. And all that meant was changing it on KDP and then just changing out the barcode on the cover and adding the price in there at the new updated price. And so it was changing out the barcode and then just re-uploading a cover. It's not that bad to do. And on Ingram Spark, you can do it once your book's been out there for a little while. There's generally a fee to do that. So you have to think about the cost of doing that. But when you're monitoring, then you know when it's time to update those costs or those prices so that you can offset your costs. Oh, that's a lot of info. It's easy to really get excited about wide distribution and start putting your stuff out there and then not really thinking about it in an organized way. So this is why I want you to think through this. One of the things you also need to make sure you're doing is protecting your margin. I know that sometimes when you do get excited like that, you want to like get your book out there. And I've seen authors who are like, I don't care what I make. I just want to get it out there. And so they're making like 30 cents on a copy. Be really careful about slashing the prices or offering these deep discounts because your margins is what keeps it sustainable. Like I said, I need to be able to sell some books so that this can be like part of my income so that I don't have to have 3 full-time jobs and I'm knocking myself out to try to publish books as well. Remember that your time, your creativity, and all the effort you put into it has value. So your book is worth paying for. You are worth paying for. You don't need to price your book at zero profitability in order to have people like you. It is about putting words out there and understanding your value when you hand this book. And I like to picture myself handing it. Like really, I picture if I were to hand the book over in person to a reader, what would I want to say to them? How do I want them to feel? And what kind of value do I know I'm placing in their hands because they're trusting me with their time and their money? Here's what I want you to remember from this series. Going wide is not about being everywhere just for the sake of it. It's really about building a sustainable publishing business. So when you make your book bookstore friendly and you make decisions that help your book get into those bookstores, when you serve your readers with professionalism, when you keep an eye on your profitability, you set yourself up for a long career, not just one book launch. So as we wrap up this 3-part series on Going Wide, I want you to remember that there's a bonus episode I mentioned that's coming out for paid subscribers on the hidden costs of making books returnable. And if you missed part 1 and 2, go back and catch them because they really lay the groundwork for everything we talked about today. Remember, this isn't a one-time decision. Every book you publish gives you another opportunity to refine your process, to adjust that strategy, and to build that stronger publishing business. I want to thank you for trusting me with your time today, and I hope you have found this helpful. If you have, feel free to share it with a friend and leave a rating or leave a comment on Substack. You'll find all the episodes from Indie Author Blueprint, all the bonuses, everything I've ever put out there for Indie Author Blueprint is right on Substack. So just go there. I'd love to hear your comments, hear your input about what you're working on. And together, I want to raise the bar on what it means to be an indie author. So thank you for helping me do that. And thank you for being a part of that journey because I love collaborating with other authors. All right, that's all I have for you today. I'll see you next time on Indie Author Blueprint.